of the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. So can all attendees switch off their cameras and mute their microphones when not speaking, and you should only switch on the microphone and camera when you're asked to speak. Thank you for that. I'll now ask Mr. Orchard to advise of the members who are participating in today's meeting and request that all members confirm their attendance when their name is called, so it is clear in the record and the recording of the meeting and can be recorded in the minute as well. So Mr. Orchard, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. I'll do the roll call as you mentioned. So Convener?
Here.
Vice Convener?
Present.
Councillor Allen?
Here.
Councillor Bolton?
Here.
Councillor Jackie Dunbar?
Present.
Councillor Houghton?
Here.
Councillor McCrae?
Present.
Councillor Alex Nicholl?
Present.
Councillor Yule?
Here.
Okay, thank you. All present and correct. Pass back to you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orchard. Okay, the first item is we need to determine that it's urgent business that we have on the agenda today. You'll see there is one item, which is item 4, which is the Aberdeen City Centre Business Improvement District renewal proposals for 2021 to 2026. Can we agree that they are urgent? Councillor Nicholl, your hand's up.
Thank you, Convener. It's really, why was this, more directed at the Chief Exec, why was this not taken at the Urgent Business Committee on the 23rd of December? The bid has been 5 years in the making, coming down the line, and we knew that on the 16th.
Councillor Nicholl, I'll just stop you there because we don't need to get into a big debate about it. I think we've obviously brought it forward when we've been notified. I don't know whether the Chief Executive wants to answer as to why it wasn't taken on the 23rd, but I believe it was due to staff resource.
Well, we haven't then brought it forward when we've been notified, because we were notified in the middle of December.
Councillor Nicholl, I'll just stop you there. You've asked a question. We'll get an answer. There is a formal notification process that has to take place. My understanding is that took place after the full council meeting that took place earlier in December. It may have happened just prior to the meeting that we had on the 23rd of December, but due to staff resource, it was not brought at that time because they were unable to bring that report. But it's my intention to move that we take it as urgent business today because they need that notification to be in place for tomorrow. So well, I'll take it, sorry.
I quite accept that we now find ourselves in a conundrum. The question I'm asking is, when we were notified round about the 16th, why it wasn't taken on the 23rd. If I could have an answer to that, it would be very helpful.
Well, the answer is staff resource. The staff resource was not there to bring the report forward. As convener of the meeting, I have asked why it is an urgent business. It's an urgent business because this was the first opportunity that staff have had to bring it forward to urgent business. I am going to move a procedural motion that we take it as urgent business today. If you want to ask further questions around the process, you can do so when we get to that item on the agenda. It's a procedural motion. Unless Councillor Yule has got anything in relation to that procedural motion, I'll be proceeding in that way. Councillor Yule, is it in relation to the determination of it being an urgent business today?
It is indeed, Convener. And while I don't doubt what you've said, I would prefer to hear an answer from officers telling us the reason that it's here today and not at a previous urgent business committee. Okay. No disrespect intended to yourself, Convener, but okay. I don't think that's a reasonable request.
I'll take in Mr. Sweetnam, who has been dealing with this item of business.
Thank you, Convener. And in response to the question, yes, Aberdeen Inspired, as the proposer, sent in its proposals to the council on the 17th of December. On account of annual leave and availability, the report did not go to the 23rd of December meeting, and it is coming to this meeting at the earliest opportunity, and in the context of the timescales right up to the proposal for the ballot itself.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Sweetnam. So on that, yes, Councillor Yule, do you want to come back in following what you've heard?
Thanks again, convener. I think Mr. Sweetnam answered, as you said yourself, it explains why we're here, and that's reasonable enough. What I would ask, and it's obviously not up to me, but just it would perhaps be helpful in future where a similar circumstance arises, where something comes in which is clearly urgent and will have to be dealt with by an urgent business committee. And presumably that was recognised before Christmas rather than after Christmas. It would have been helpful, not essential by any means, and there's no obligation for this to happen, but I think it would have been helpful and perhaps courteous to let the members of the Urgent Business Committee know, or at least the group leaders know, that this item was on the horizon or would have to be dealt with promptly by an Urgent Business Committee meeting, and that we would be told subsequently when that would be. I think that would be helpful and would avoid discussions like this in future.
I'm sure that officers will take on board the comments that you've made, Councillor Yule. So on that basis, I will be moving that we accept this as urgent business today. Can we agree that, or do we need to go to the procedural motion?
Great.
Great.
Councillor Nicholl, are you agreeing?
I'll agree, yes.
Okay.
We now have to, because it's got to be dealt with by tomorrow.
Thank you for that. Okay, that now takes us on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. I myself have a declaration. I am the council representative on the Aberdeen Inspired Board. It is therefore my intention to withdraw from the meeting when the matter is discussed, and I therefore will not take part in the decision-making process. Are there any other declarations of interest in relation to the item before us today? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, we'll take that as there are no further declarations of interest. That takes us on to item 3, which is the minute of the previous Urgent Business Committee, which was held on the 23rd of December 2020. It's here for approval. Can we agree?
Agreed.
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 Okay, thank you for that. Okay, that now does take us on to item 4. So as I've intimated, I will now leave the meeting. Councillor Lumsden will take the chair as vice convener, and Councillor Leslie Dunbar will substitute for me on the committee. And I will now leave the committee at this point.
Thank you, convener. Okay, moving to agenda item 4. Mr. Sweetnam, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, convener. Yes, just by way of a preface to the report, Aberdeen Inspired sent its Business Improvement District proposal to the council, as I said, on the 17th of December 2020, and requested that a renewal ballot for the 21 to 2026 period be held on the 25th of March 2021. The procedure around the bid ballot for renewal is in fact a two-stage process. The first requires that a local authority indicates whether it plans to veto or not the bid proposals, as you have them in Appendix 1. If it vetoes the proposal, this would stop the ballot taking place, and if not, then the local authority has to instruct the ballot holder to proceed. That is the business at Urgent Business Committee today. The second stage of that two-stage process requires the council, and in Aberdeen City Council's case as a levy payer, to agree its voting intention for or against the Business Improvement District proposals, in order that its vote can be cast at that ballot. So in closing, the committee today is not being asked to determine its voting intention. That will be the subject of a report to the March Council itself. So that's all I was just going to say as a preface to your discussions today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sweetnam. Any questions for officers? Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. My first question is, obviously the report lays out that the number of properties and rateable values is used in deciding how many votes some businesses will be able to cast. What's the position for Aberdeen City Council? Because we obviously have a number of properties in the city centre. How many votes does the council have?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. My understanding, based on the 2016 records of rateable properties, is that the council would have 14 votes.
Thank you very much. Obviously, that 14 votes, if we then have the March meeting and we vote, for example, for, how many votes are actually needed to take the bid over the line? Is there a given number? I think it's 50%, but I think if I've read the papers correctly, have I correctly read that obviously they need a 25% turnout, so that would be theoretically 12.5% would be sufficient. Is that correct?
So my colleague, Mr. Ingalls, is here in terms of some of the legislation. So my understanding is that in Scotland, a business improvement district requires a minimum turnout of 25% of the headcount and 25% of the rateable value. And I think that is set out in page 37 of the report in the appendix. So there's, I think, 800 or so eligible voters, and it's based on that, that if the minimum turnout is achieved, then 50% of the headcount and 50% of the rateable value is required to progress. So it's based on the turnout itself.
Thank you. That's very helpful. My final question is in and around if we find ourselves in a position further down the line, will we have all the appendices? Because the appendices that have been provided have obviously been provided in confidence, so we can't discuss them in this arena. But perhaps the most important one is the business case. Well, when will that be provided to us? Because, you know, we're being asked today to potentially veto something or not, but we don't necessarily have all the information that's contained or proposed to be provided to us in the fullness of time. I think in fairness to everybody, it would be helpful to know when we get access to all the information on which to base our decision.
Mr. Sweetnam, do you
Yes.
know that?
So I think, as the report sets out, the business plan is being finalised right now. It will be issued by the proposer, Aberdeen Inspired, on the 15th of January. It will also be issued with the ballot papers on the 28th of January, and will be available for levy payers to review. From an officer point of view of the council, that business plan will form the basis of the report going to full council in March, and will be provided at that point as well.
And can I just check, Mr. Sweetnam, none of that will be exempt at that point, or when the documents come out from the Inspired?
I would need to refer to my colleagues in legal. There may be some financial or GDPR issues that might be exempt, but in general, no. And indeed, in 2016, I think the council had the business plan at its committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholl, did you have anything further to ask?
One further question based on that. Obviously, you've explained it's a two-stage process, and today we're simply being asked to look at the veto question. But is it normal for us not to have the full picture when we're being asked to do that? Because I would have thought the business plan is probably one of the more important documents I would have wanted to see when deciding whether or not I wanted to support or otherwise this measure. But there's obviously quite a complicated legal process here that you seem to be alluding to. So is there a reason why we don't have all the documents before us today?
So the part of the process from the proposer, Aberdeen Inspired, is to submit the business plans to Scottish Government and reviewed by the Scottish Towns Partnership, whose remit includes reviewing business plans as part of on behalf of the Scottish Government. So that process has been going on. Officers took the view today that based on the information you do have in the Appendix 1 and the supporting appendices to that appendix, that there was enough information for the committee to make its decision today on proceeding or not, as the case may be. I think it's just a timing thing. And as soon as we have the business plan, certainly the intention is that Aberdeen Inspired, as I say, issues out on the 15th of January through its processes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sweetnam. That's a helpful answer. However, I would have to say I'm disappointed that maybe others have seen a document that would have been helpful for us to see before we make a decision today. Thank you.
I think, in fairness, Councillor Nicholl, 3.5 and 3.6 sets out, the reasons that we can veto this, and I think we've been given all the information to decide on that. I'll bring in Councillor Ewell at this point.
Many thanks, Vice Convener. It was just to ask, Mr. Sweetnam, in his answer to Councillor Nicholl's question, said that the business plan would form the basis of he and his colleagues' report to the council meeting at the start of March, and that the business plan, I think he said, would be issued to us at that stage. Given that it's being issued to bid members well before then, and that we are actually the board of a bid member, I would certainly like to see that document as soon as the council receives it. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I think certainly I would find it helpful, and I know my colleagues would find it helpful to be able to review that at an earlier date, a document which, after all, will be circulated to hundreds of businesses in the city centre. Is that possible, and can that happen, please?
So I think the business plan will be issued by Aberdeen Inspired with all the ballot papers. So I guess I'd need to just check in with my colleagues on the governance side. But as Councillor Ewell says, it will be a publicly available document, and indeed Aberdeen Inspired has confirmed that it will be available to businesses from that point.
Councillor Ewell.
Could I thank Mr. Sweetnam for that pretty helpful answer. I may have misunderstood him in his answer to Councillor Nicholl's question, but I thought, Vice Convener, that Mr. Sweetnam said the business plan would be issued sometime later this week, in fact, if I've got my dates right. I think he said the 15th. I apologise if I got that wrong. And then issued again with the ballot papers. So if it's issued sometime in mid-January, is it not possible for us to get that then?
I will just check back in with Aberdeen Inspired the exact dates and clarify to the committee. In terms of the report to council, the business, in answering Councillor Nicholl's proposed question, I was referring to the business plan would provide a lot of the material evidence for the council to make its decision in March, and that's what I meant in that regard.
Councillor Nicholl. Sorry, Councillor Yule.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Again, thanks, Mr. Sweetnam, for that very helpful answer. I think his answer is really helpful. I look forward to seeing the business plan as soon as it's practicable, and without offence to our friends in the media, given it's going to so many people in just a few days' time, I'm pretty certain that St Aberdeen Journals are one of the businesses in the city centre. There's a fair chance that we'll all be reading some of the content, at least, in our local papers very shortly after it's issued. And as I say, without any offence to the P&G and the Evening Express, and the original as well, of course, are now based in the city centre, I'd rather read the original rather than the edited highlights as published in the press.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, could we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. No, Councillor Nicholl.
Just sorry, Vice Convener. It was just to, can we agree that very helpful suggestion from Councillor Yule? I'm not sure of where we are hanging. He's made a suggestion, but I'm not sure we've got a definitive answer. I think that would be very helpful to see the documents in early course.
I think it's been said by Mr. Sweetnam that we will get the documents as soon as they are available to us.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Mr. Sweetnam?
Yes,
Don't
and
put
just
words in your mouth.
no, but to just clarify, if any clarification was needed, we have not seen any of the business plan at this point, so I don't see why we wouldn't issue as soon as we have it.
Thank you. Okay, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Great. Okay, thank you everyone. That's now the end, and we'll just switch off the recording.